I want to tell you a story, the story of a society whose voices have faded and whose beliefs have long been forgotten. Of a people who lived centuries ago, who drew their own unique models of the universe, developed their own faiths, and produced calendars so detailed and extraordinary they will leave you speechless. The story of a civilization that saw celestial bodies as gods, their movements as sacred, and turned their calendars into religious texts. I will tell this story through the last work they left behind, through the Voynich Manuscript. The society I am talking about is the ancient Maya civilization. Yes, the Voynich Manuscript is a Maya codex. I am aware that this sounds strange. In fact, many viewers will find it unbelievable. But remember, great locks do not have small keys. The key to such a great enigma had to be hidden in an equally unexpected possibility. In a moment, you will hear the solution to the Voynich Manuscript. Believe me, for me, what truly matters is not so much solving this puzzle, but making sure that the last voices of these people from the past are heard. All I am trying to do is to bring attention to the final message of this lost culture. However, since I know that many of you will first want to hear the solution, I will begin by explaining the general subject of the Voynich Manuscript. Then in future videos, I will dive into the details. If you're ready, let's begin. But as I said, these are only the results. I will explain the reasons one by one throughout the process. In all ancient societies, the cardinal directions were considered sacred. Similarly, for the ancient Maya, the directions were holy. The gods of these directions were called the Bacabs. But what set the Mayas' understanding of cardinal directions apart from other cultures was that the Bacabs were associated with rain. Each direction, each Bacab, was paired with a chak, that is, a rain god, because in the ancient Maya worldview, holding up the sky and governing the rain were directly the same thing. In fact, in rural areas, the Maya didn't even make this distinction and would simply call the Bacabs the four chaks. Why? Because, as we learn from the Voynich Manuscript, the sky consists of 9 separate centers, 9 cosmological realms, even 9 cosmological countries. In the sky, there are a total of 8 countries located at the cardinal and intercardinal directions. These countries are filled with water, the source of all water in the universe. Celestial water reservoirs. A perpetual stream of water runs between these countries, binding them together. The universe's water is stored in these realms and radiates from them. However, our universe, the central realm, does not have a direct link to every one of these celestial water reservoirs. The rain that falls on us originates specifically from the countries positioned at the intercardinal directions. The reason I refer to intercardinal directions is that the Voynich Manuscript aligns with other Maya sources in placing cardinal directions diagonally. This reflects an astronomical reality. At the tropical latitudes of Mesoamerica, the sun's solstitial rising and setting points are not on the east-west axis, but on the northeast-southwest and southeast-northwest axes. Maya astronomers base their directional cosmology on this empirical observation. As we see in the Rosette page of the Voynich Manuscript, our realm is connected to the 4 intercardinal directions. The water that reaches our world, the rain, comes from these 4 directions. This explains why the ancient Maya associated the Bacabs so closely with rain, because according to the Voynich Manuscript, the source of rain is directly the Bacabs. That's why they simply called the 4 Bacabs the 4 chaks, because the chak's role was precisely to bring rain. I may repeat this a few more times throughout the process, but I want to say it here as well. The Voynich Manuscript will continue to reveal the reasons behind many ancient Maya beliefs. So, why is water so important? Why is the Voynich Manuscript a water book? Why were the Mayans so interested in the circulation of water in the universe? Naturally, one of the reasons for this is, of course, agriculture. The fact that nearly half of the Voynich manuscript is dedicated to plants already shows this. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is the concept of its. The Voynich manuscript is actually following its along with water. Its is the secondary force of water for the Maya. In other words, its is the invisible life energy that water carries with it. Just as sunlight carries invisible heat, rains carry an invisible life energy with them. That is, its. On the other hand, the importance of this concept, for which there are clues in ancient Maya ruins, but whose significance for the ancient Maya is nearly impossible to understand by only looking at these ruins, begins to become clear when one understands the Voynich manuscript. It's the complete opposite of the Western understanding of inanimate matter. For the Maya, everything in the universe is alive, and the source of this aliveness is its. Its is the life force of the universe. It circulates throughout the universe together with water. And this is precisely what the Voynich manuscript is about, the its cycle. According to the Voynich manuscript, its is born from the sacred Bacabs, first gives life to the stars and the sky, then descends to the earth with rains, gives life to the earth, and from there flows into the underworld, forming life there. Literally, its refers to naturally seeping liquids with magical power, such as dew, tree sap, and resin. But the concept is much broader than that. It carries the meaning of a vitalizing essence that encompasses all vital fluids, from dew to blood, from resin to ink. Its manifests in the universe in 5 categories. In an atmospheric sense, dew. In a botanical context, plant sap, resin, copal. In the mineral class, obsidian, jade, flint. Bodily as blood, sexual fluids. And as manufactured materials, ink, paint, incense. The connection of minerals like obsidian to its might seem strange here. It's a bit outside our topic, but I want to briefly touch on it both as an explanation and to demonstrate the importance of the its concept. According to Carl Tauber's studies, the phonetic value its is directly associated with obsidian blades. Priests would draw their own blood with obsidian blades to offer the most valuable its to the gods. In other words, they would mix drops of their own life essence into the universe's its cycle. Thus, their essence would become part of this cycle, extending from the Bacabs to the underworld. Can you imagine? Your blood, your essence, your DNA would reach the Bacabs and the underworld as a sent message. When your blood mixed into a cenote or a water reservoir in a cave, you would become part of the its circulation in the universe. Particularly at Chichen Itza, this practice seems to have been taken further. Humans were sacrificed into the sacred cenote. Here, one must ask the question, was a human being sacrificed? Or would a person, with all their bodily fluids, transcend the life we live and become completely part of this cycle, thus achieving immortality? I won't dwell on it, but in these practices, obsidian was likely used for bloodletting, carrying the meaning attributed to the dark background behind the stars. For this reason, obsidian was directly connected to its. In short, its and the its cycle were extremely important concepts for the ancient Maya. The Voynich manuscript today brings clarity to this concept. With what I've explained so far, I've tried to clarify the meaning of the its concept and the its reservoirs in the universe, that is, the Bacabs, according to the Voynich manuscript. But naturally, in an ancient shamanic belief system, this alone is not enough to explain everything, because an observer trying to understand the place of a concept like water in cosmology is essentially trying to determine the rhythm and causes of rain. Rain does not pour directly from the Bacabs. Water comes to the earth through rains. Rather than a regular flow, there is a largely predictable precipitation curve. Therefore, for an ancient sky observer, it is not enough to merely determine that water resides in the Bacabs. Along with that, they must also determine the stages of arrival of the rain that comes from the Bacabs to the Earth. So, how did the ancient Maya perceive this process? Or how did they fill the gaps in between? Now brace yourselves. In the Codex, this is explained so differently that you will be amazed. It reveals some previously unknown Maya approaches, and it answers many unresolved questions about the ancient Maya. But I need to approach the subject by first explaining the ancient Maya calendar system, details of which are given in the Voynich Manuscript. At this point, many of you will think of the Hab or Tzolk'in calendars. However, Voynich does not describe these calendars themselves, but rather their roots. It explains how these calendars were derived. Anyone deeply familiar with the Voynich Manuscript has noticed that the second most mysterious point, after its alphabet, is the 17 phases drawn around the sun, because no known calendar system in the world divides the sun's movements into 17 parts. Furthermore, each of these phases is paired with a star or a star group. No matter how much literature you review, there is no calendar that works on this logic. This is why this is one of the most difficult sections of the manuscript to explain. On the other hand, such a calendar approach does not exist in the known Maya calendar either. However, when we combine this with the other illustrations in the Voynich manuscript, we see that these 17 phases did exist in the ancient Maya culture. The reason they are not popularly known today or not reflected in ancient Maya sources is that this is not a calendrical result, but rather the cause of the ancient Maya calendars, the explanation of everything. The meaning of the 17 phases is this. Maya astronomers divided the sun's northward and southward movement into 17 phases in order to determine a detailed and trackable solar calendar. These phases, each approximately 10 days long, allowed someone observing the sky to understand what date it was. These are the 10-day Maya weeks. Think of it this way. You're watching the horizon in the evening as the sun sets. Whichever star rises from the point where the sun set, you understand which week you are in. Because of this, each week is actually matched with a star name. Although this method requires serious knowledge of the stars, it allows you to determine a detailed date with the naked eye without needing written calendars. Indeed, today we cannot do this without using written calendars. This method likely provided a practical way for the community, while also creating astronomical awareness among the people by forcing both priests and ordinary individuals to acquire star knowledge. On the other hand, by thus dividing the sun's north-south movement into 17 phases, they essentially obtained a celestial equator, 8 southern latitudes and 8 northern latitudes. These latitudes, spanning 76 degrees, formed a celestial coordinate system. Because they measured the sun against the stars, they arrived at astronomical realities rather than just local observations. That's why, in the seasonal diagram on page F67v2, when dividing the phases where the sun is directly overhead twice, they based it on the periods when it is directly overhead at the equator, not when it aligns with Yucatan. They placed the months accordingly. In other words, they were aware that the equator was further south than them. They knew the location of Yucatan on the north-south plane. Naturally, they also noticed this. As the sun approaches its northernmost or southernmost point, it also gets closer to the Earth. But when it reaches the celestial meridian, it is at its highest point, as seen from the Earth. Similarly, the sun rises in the morning from below the horizon, ascends to its highest point, and sets in the evening below the horizon. In short, the sun traces a dome-like movement. This observation showed them that the sun not only moves along the north-south line, but also moves up and down. When it approaches the midpoint of the sky, whether at noon each day or during the equinoxes, the sun is at its highest point. But in the north, south, east, and west, the sun is at its closest position to the Earth. Indeed, when they combined these movements of the sun with coordinate systems, a 9-tiered celestial pyramid, or Pyramid of the Sun, emerged. Thus, the star at the place where the sun set also showed the ancient Maya which tier the sun was on. But when the sun completes the semicircle, it traces in the sky in the underworld. They thought that the same pyramid must also exist underground. Thus emerged the 9-level pyramid of Xibalba, or the 9 layers of Xibalba. Later, they designated a god for each pyramid level of Xibalba, and they called these Bolon Tiku, or the Lords of the Night. Today, it is known that the Bolon Tiku are the reigning gods in sequence, but exactly at what time intervals the shift changes occur is not precisely known. When we look at the Voynich Manuscript, we can say that this shift change happens every 10 days, because the sun changes its level every 10 days. On the other hand, this perspective brought forth the 9-layered Xibalba sky. However, because our sky is a more intricate system that also encompasses the Bakabs, it was seen as a 13-layered, 13-part sky with 9 + 4 Bakabs. As you can see, the 17 phases are a cause, but for example, the 9 steps and 9 platforms of the Temple of Kukulkan, also known as El Castillo, or the Castle, found in the ancient city of Chichen Itza, are a result. This is precisely why the Voynich Manuscript is a unique source with the potential to explain not the results, but the causes related to the ancient Maya. In such a celestial pyramid, when the sun moves from north to south, it passes through a total of 17 steps. However, since it also passes through the same steps underground during the nights over this period, it passes through a total of 34 steps. And because the sun makes the north-south or south-north movement twice a year, in 1 year it travels 4 times 17 steps, that is, 68 steps. This is why, in the 4th innermost calendar ring on page F57V of the Voynich Manuscript, 17 characters are repeated 4 times in a row, because that ring tracks the sun's annual movements. You can only notice this when you understand the Maya, because it's not a system we're accustomed to. Its purpose is not daily use, but ritualistic date determination, because by using that calendar, you can track which step the sun is on. Thus, you can see which goddess is influential during that time period. However, keep in mind that the pyramid is just a metaphor. It is a geometric shape used to understand the mythological movements of the sun. Shamanic communities around the world, and even the Maya themselves, also explain this with symbolisms like trees or mountains. But in architecture, the most appropriate symbol that can be applied in temples is the pyramid. A temple built in the shape of a tree is unthinkable. Naturally, a construction project that is wide at the base and narrow at the peak naturally gives rise to pyramids. Now let's take a break and consider the answer to this question. The Voynich Manuscript reveals the foundations of the ancient Maya belief system. So, doesn't this also reveal the foundations of ancient architecture found all around the world? When you accept the universe in this way, your perspective on the sun's movements becomes marginal. It's truly difficult to distinguish whether this marginality was unique to the ancient Maya, or if it was because Pre-Columbian America was the last stronghold where ancient shamanism survived, because the ancient Maya were not the first to propose the concept of the celestial mountain. This view reflects the common cosmological perception of all shamanic societies. However, what sets the Maya apart from others is that during the period when the Voynich Manuscript was written, they had not yet been influenced by Abrahamic religions, still maintained a shamanic belief system, and left behind sources that have survived to the present day. By now, you must have realized that the source I am referring to is the Voynich Manuscript. Indeed, the Babylonians also held a belief in the celestial mountain and had built ziggurats to symbolize it. The Altaic Tatars likewise believed in a cosmic mountain, and the Abakan Tatars called it the Iron Mountain. In Hindu cosmology, it is Mount Meru. In Iranian tradition, it is Hara Berezaiti. And among the ancient Germanic peoples, it is Himmelsbjerg. In Mesopotamian beliefs, just as in the Voynich Manuscript, it is the Mountain of Lands, connecting various sacred sites to one another. In short, this celestial pyramid, both in its current form and with the features I will describe in the sections ahead, is part of an ancient human belief system. What I find myself wondering is this: did the ancient Maya take this belief and develop it into such a detailed cosmology on their own? Or did similar cosmological and calendrical frameworks exist among ancient shamanic communities whose sources have simply not survived to the present day? And that is precisely why I am running ads on YouTube and inviting people to watch this video. I am not a YouTuber. I am simply trying to make the voice of this codex, left behind by the ancient Maya, heard, and to show the meaning and potential it carries. The true value of the Voynich Manuscript lies not only in the fact that it originated from the ancient Maya, it is that it may be the sole written source of shamanism, a religion that dominated the entire world for over 100,000 years before the Abrahamic faiths. This is what I want people to recognize. But returning to our subject, if you imagine a solar pyramid in the sky and regard it as the axis mundi, the center of the universe, then you are compelled to consider all other celestial bodies in relation to this celestial mountain. And indeed, that is precisely what the ancient Maya did. As I mentioned, when viewed from this perspective, the sun spends an average of 10 days on each step of this pyramid. However, this number is not exactly 10 days. It is 10.58 days. And frankly, for a calendar system, this is unacceptable. The days must be precise in order to be trackable. Otherwise, every calendar carries a margin of error. Even the Gregorian calendar corrects its own error by adding a day to February every 4 years. The ancient Maya recognized this as well. In order to divide the calendar into clean, precise days, one particular movement of the sun became their guide. Throughout the year, the sun completes its annual cycle by traveling from north to south and back again to the north. However, in this cycle, although the pyramid has 17 steps, the sun in fact takes 18 steps. If you think of this on a circular diagram and try to track it directly, you will see that the sun loses one phase every year. It is a bit complicated. I struggled quite a bit myself before I identified and understood it. That is why I thought the most logical approach would be to explain it with a visual diagram. Now look at the screen. Since the sun passes through this pyramid twice a year, I have drawn the pyramid twice, side by side. Now count the sun's steps. If you pay attention, the 17th step corresponds to the first step of the pyramid on the return journey. For this reason, on the return, it remains at a total of 16 steps. In other words, instead of 34 phases, there are 33 phases in total. Once again, imagine the sun as a person, and count the steps from when this person climbs up the pyramid and descends down the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You will see that our imaginary sun person takes 18 steps in total. In short, this calendar must reset at some point. In other words, the sun must first descend from this pyramid and then begin climbing again. To achieve this, it must take 18 steps through the pyramid. In brief, the solar pyramid has 17 steps, but 18 phases. For this reason, on page F67 V2, 18 rays extend from the sun. Each ray corresponds to one phase. However, at one point, 2 rays are merged into a single phase. Here, the final step and the Earth are combined into one phase, because the Earth cannot be paired with a star. As someone who has been studying the Voynich Manuscript for many years, I can say this: the author drew these illustrations with such meticulous care, making every effort to explain the subject through visuals, and in truth left out not a single detail. And it is precisely this number 18 that forms the foundation of the Winal. Winal is the name given to the Maya solar months, and there are 18 Winals in a year. Until now, the origin of this number 18 had remained unknown. Yet the Voynich Manuscript lays bare the very reason behind it. On the other hand, with this calculation, the Sun spends exactly 20 days on each step, including the Earth, completing 360 days of the year. Furthermore, from the summit of the solar pyramid in our sky to the summit of the Xibalba pyramid, the Sun travels a total of 20 steps, 9 steps through our sky, and 9 steps through the sky of the Xibalba pyramid. Additionally, since the Sun cannot pass directly between these two pyramids, it also passes through our Earth and through the surface of the underworld, making a total of 20 steps, or 20 layers traversed. In short, the Sun repeats 20 layers every single day. This is the daily rhythm of the Sun. In the Sun's annual rhythm, the number 20 represents the number of days it spends on each step. And this is precisely why the ancient Maya numbering system is base 20. Because for a society that transformed their calendar into a sacred text, being in harmony with the Sun must have been of great importance. If the Sun's movements are base 20, then the ancient Maya numbering system must also be base 20. This would have both facilitated astronomical record-keeping and provided a numerological sense of the sacred. Alongside this, the ancient Maya called the remaining 5 days Wayeb. These 5 days, which do not conform to the sacred numbers or the order of the pyramid system and cannot be explained, were considered inauspicious. When I look at this celestial belief system, I understand the reason for this far more clearly. The solar pyramid is there, the numbers and the rhythm of the Sun are established. So why does this 5-day discrepancy occur? The gods do not make mathematical errors. There must be an inauspicious, non-divine cause for this paranormal phenomenon. And it is for this very reason that on the following page of the Voynich Manuscript, there is a drawing featuring a total of 19 sun illustrations arranged around a center, divided into seasons. These depict the 18 Uinal periods and the 5-day Wayeb period together, representing 19 periods in total. In short, this drawing is the Hab calendar, that is, the Maya solar calendar. Let us end this video here for now. I do not want it to become too long and tedious. I will be publishing 2 more videos on the general subject of the Voynich Manuscript. After that, I will be sharing, piece by piece, the phonetic values of the letters, the reading rules, the translations, and my evidence showing how I arrived at these conclusions. See you in the next video.